In May of 1939, when I was 14, we got permission to come to the United States. Had we not gotten out just in time, or had we been rejected again by the consul, by the American consul, we would have been in that position of being sent to death camps. And of course, like most people who were sent to the death camp, would have been killed.
Fritz Ottenheimer, his parents and sister Elsa were very lucky. They got out of Constance, Germany just in time. But 6 years later, Fritz returned, this time to help fight the Nazis.
Well, I was 8 years old when Hitler came to power. It didn't take long before I realized that this was a very drastic change, that it wasn't just for the adults, it wasn't just something political. It affected every one of us, even the kids, because the tremendous amount of propaganda, hateful speeches, and then the restrictions came, all kinds of laws, cutting down on what we could do.
Though restrictive laws soon were in place, the people of Constance weren't hostile to the 500 Jews who lived there.
Some 200 or 300 people immigrated to Constance from other parts of Germany that were more vicious. They heard that Constance was a better town.
Jews fleeing the Nazi regime from other cities soon started pouring into Constance. The city is on the Swiss border, and Switzerland offered safe haven. Fritz's dad helped one family cross a small creek into Switzerland.
Well, they must have called their relatives and friends immediately, and soon we had a stream of people coming through our house, to our house, for the purpose of being smuggled into Switzerland.
Fritz's dad was joined by a sympathetic local police officer who felt the Nazi persecution of the Jews was wrong. They helped between 200 and 300 people escape into Switzerland, but then things went wrong for the Ottenheimers.
People stopped coming to our store. Without customers, you can't run a store very long. So we had to give up our store very early after the Nazis came to power. Then in 1938 came Kristallnacht. That was really the first nationally organized violence in Germany. There was no doubt after that that we had to get out. Constance had an SS squad. Constance had the Gestapo, the secret police. Constance had a fanatical Nazi mayor, but the population generally didn't participate much, except waving flags and things like that. When Kristallnacht came, the SS squad blew up the synagogue with explosives. The Gestapo arrested all the Jewish men above age 16 and transported them to Dachau concentration camp.
Fritz's dad was one of those arrested. They held him in Dachau for a month before he was released.
It was just in time, because if they'd kept him another week or so, I don't think he would have survived. So he came back, and we were waiting. Finally, in May of 1939, when I was 14, we got permission to come to the United States.
Fritz went through high school excelling as a student and then was eligible to be drafted.
I was accepted into the United States Army on the condition that I sign a waiver. Because I was not a citizen of the United States, I could not be forced to serve in the Army of the United States. I did not enjoy the idea of joining this tremendous conflict. At the same time, my feeling was that I had a much better reason for fighting against my fatherland than all the other recruits had. All they knew about Nazi Germany was what they read in the newspapers. I had the personal experience of the persecution.
Trained as a sharpshooter, Fritz soon was given a different job.
Along came this other outfit, which was an artillery battalion that had been converted into a security guard. And they needed someone who could speak German. Then the war ended, and the rest of the unit I was with was sent back to the United States for discharge because they were all long veterans of the fighting. I was transferred into military government, special branch it was called, which was responsible for denazification. It was responsible for screening people who had applied or were applying for jobs in the German government, for jobs in the German police force, in the education activity, trying to keep the old Nazis out of important jobs where they could get back into power. We had SS records, Gestapo records. Very important, we had the personnel records of war factories where people applied for employment and had to prove their loyalty to the Nazi regime in order to get the job. And they made all these statements of how much they loved Hitler and the government, and it was signed and notarized. So we had wonderful evidence for people in that area. It gave me a lot of satisfaction to know that I could actually get back at some of these people for things that they had done. How could it happen? What is the lesson that we learned from studying the Holocaust? The most important lesson, I think, that I came up with myself was there were 65 million Germans living in Germany when Hitler came to power. 65 million Germans did not become 65 million murderers. They became 65 million bystanders.